Discussion with Vishnu Shom from NDTV and Professor Yo Dongxiao from the National Defense University of China. Indeed, you know what, if we are going to continue discussing these details, we will not have enough time. We have 12 minutes left. Why don't we look into the future? I mean, right now, I think the collective or the common will of the both countries is let's not be blocked by this border issue and move forward to the greater issue, which is BRICS cooperation, where China and India are very important players. Vishnu, again to you, in terms of, since you're a defense editor, in terms of defense and security, maybe an anti-terrorism, where do you see the potential of China and India cooperating better in the future?
Well, India and China clearly need to cooperate a lot better when it comes to that. We have exercises between our soldiers in the past where, for example, they've worked together to try and deal with potential anti-terrorist scenarios. But India has a fundamental issue with China when it comes to Pakistan and the fact that China won't designate Masood Azhar and Hafiz Saeed as international terrorists. This remains a critical concern as far as India is concerned when it comes to the issue of terrorism. Obviously, terrorism is an international scourge. Terrorism is a problem that China faces, India faces, so many countries around the world face. But there needs to be, India believes, a consistent strategy as far as China is concerned when it deals with the issue of terrorists. We face a daily threat from terrorists in our country. It's an unfortunate reality. But a large part of that threat, in fact almost all of it, comes from one of China's closest partners, Pakistan. That represents a challenge to India.
Professor Yu, first of all, explain to us what kind of cooperation have taken place between China and India in terms of security, in terms of fighting terrorism, and then maybe you can address some of the points that Vishnu mentioned.
Actually, I agreed with you and also Vishnu on the point that it's not good for us to quarrel over those details, because it's very natural. We have different national interests. Exactly. National territorial integrity and sovereignty, actually, for any country, we have no room for concession. Everyone will protect that. Of course, we also have different interpretation over many issues. The international treaties in the history, the interpretation of the past. So if we quarrel here, maybe we debate several hours. There's maybe no winner or no result. So we should look forward. We are two great nations. Not only in Asia, but also in the world. Two longest civilizations in the world. The most populous country in the world. So we have every reason to cooperate, to promote our bilateral cooperation. There are many fields of potential cooperation between our two countries in the field.
For example,
in the defense sector, to my knowledge, just as Vishnu have mentioned that the terrorism is the common threat not only to China, to India, is actually the common threat to the international community. China and the India military have the cooperation on the counterterrorism. We have the joint drill training. And also, I am from the International College of Defense Studies. We have the international office. Every year we have more than around 500 international officers from more than 100 countries, including India. So we have the Indian officers. They are actually high quality military officers, and we have joint discussions over many issues. So these all are the potential area between China and India in the military sectors, in the military fields.
Yes, but again, I would also like you to address the issue that Vishnu pointed, especially the designation of, for instance, Azhar as a terrorist under UN consensus, let's say, because I've heard many Indian journalists or scholars mention this point, that China is somehow reluctant to put the person that India, or two of the people that India considers terrorists, but China refused to agree to designate them as a UN designated terrorists. What is your understanding on such issues? China's attitude on terrorism, basically.
Actually, China opposes the terrorism in any form and anywhere, no matter against whom. We have one standard, not like some countries, they have double standards. Say, if in their interest they are not terrorism, against their interest, they are terrorism. But for China, we have one standard. We oppose the terrorism in any form, so China. For the particular terrorist organization or person, I'm not very sure. But we think that China and India have the common interest to fight against terrorism, not only in the South Asia. We think the peace and the stable security environment in the South Asia is not only conducive or in the interest of the countries in the region, but also in the interest of China, because South Asia is a very important part of China's Belt Road Initiative. So we hope that we can have very good cooperation with the countries in South Asia, including India. Of course, we have cooperation with other countries. So terrorism definitely the threats to the regional security and stability. So China firmly opposes the terrorism in any form.
Vishnu, let me put this question to you. I've read quite some media reports from India, and my impression that India seems to be seeing China as a threat. In a security sense, India is teaming up.
Threat or rival? I mean, again, it's a matter of words.
Rival, understandably, but threat is the feeling I'm getting. For instance, India is teaming up with Japanese and American navies to do, very large-scale military exercises, and
I've covered a lot of those. Yeah.
Yes, and also supposedly selling missiles to Vietnam, also, which is not happening. That's good news.
That's been denied.
But what we have observed is a growing trend for India to aligning itself with the United States to strategically contain China. Yeah. And China, Professor Yu, I would say China has a problem with that. Is that true? What is the Indian rationale behind it?
I think that's a very important question, and I think that reflects the larger set of concerns. India sees China establishing its presence militarily in several areas where India has concerns. And China, of course, has concerns with India, and, for example, allying very closely with countries like the United States, which oppose China's in the South China Seas. So it's two strong countries with two well-defined set of regional and international strategic concerns, which have views which don't work together. For example, China continues to arm Pakistan. Pakistan will be receiving Chinese submarines. China has built a very large military base, a naval base in Djibouti. China deploys nuclear submarines in the Indian Ocean.
It's not a military base, it's a logistics support base, we're calling it.
It's a logistics support, fair enough. It's a logistics support base, which is logistics and support for naval vessels. So India sees this as a challenge. On the other hand, China obviously has concerns with India as well. Let's not forget,
India already has a military base in Djibouti before China is
India doesn't have any military base in Djibouti.
No? No. Okay, maybe my information is wrong,
India
but that
does not have any military base in Djibouti.
Okay, but India...
the Indian Ocean, for right or for wrong, the point that I'm trying to make is India's area of interest. The South China Seas is obviously China's area of interest. You don't see Indian warships or an Indian effort at seeking parcels of land in the South China Seas. We do deploy our ships over there, but that's to visit countries like China, or our partners like the United States, or Japan for that matter, or Vietnam. But we don't send nuclear submarines in over there. We don't send large flotillas several times a year. So I think the bottom line is this: there are differences. Let's learn to work and live with our differences. Like we have done with Doklam, where both sides got together, the diplomats sat down on a table, resolved a particular heated issue. We need to be able to do that with all issues.
Professor Yeo, how do we build trust, rebuild trust maybe, and confidence between the two countries, especially the two militaries?
Just now I have mentioned that actually our two countries have every reason to develop a very good close cooperation with the other. But the main problem is that there lack of mutual trust among us. As you mentioned that, as you know, China has quite close cooperation with Pakistan and maybe Sri Lanka and some other countries in the South Asia, but India has strong suspicions for China's intention there. And also, in recent years, India developed its military cooperations with the United States, Japan, and so we also have a strong doubt what's the real motivation, because India is always regarded as the leader of the non-alignment movement.
Yes.
So it means that India will change its policies and also to form a kind of anti-China alliance encircle China. So in China, we also have some suspicions and doubts there. And also, but another very important point I want to mention here, I think basically there's maybe some Chinese have some bad image of India, but there's still a lot of Chinese people have very good feeling towards the Indian people, and also never see India as a threat. But unfortunately, many Indian politicians and senior officers openly say China is the #1 threat. But you can.
We have to leave it there. Professor Yo, we are running out of time. Vishnu, maybe this question for you to bring back and think about, whether that is true or not, and whether, if it is true, what to do about it. Many thanks. We have to leave it there. Vishnu Shom, New Delhi TV's defense editor and principal anchor, and Professor Yo Dongxiao from the National Defense University of China. I want to make a quick last point. After 2 months of page can finally be turned. We've had countless debates on this subject on our show, sometimes more civilized, sometimes fiery, even bitter. This piece of news, regardless of the different versions of details, comes like a spring breeze to me and many other observers. Indeed, the stakes are too high for the two giants in Asia and in the world to exchange hostilities, sticks, stones, fists, or anything that's not kindness or goods. Hopefully, such incidents will not repeat themselves in the future now that we have understood each other a little bit better. That's all for this edition of The Point with Li Xin. As always, follow us on Twitter or visit our Facebook page using the handle The Point with LX. Download the application called CGTN Live or go to YouTube and look for CGTN The Point. Thanks for watching. You've got the point.